The forensic scientist held the tooth in gloved hands and looked at it under magnification. It was 700 years old. Extracted from a skull excavated from a mass grave in Edinburgh, Scotland. The skull belonged to a child who died during the Black Death in 1349. The tooth looked ordinary, yellowed with age, worn from medieval diet, stained from soil contact. But inside that tooth, preserved in the dental pulp at the tooth's core, was Yersinia pestis DNA, the bacteria that killed 200 million people. The secret of the Black Death's origin, spread, evolution, and lethality, all preserved in 200 teeth from plague victims across Europe and Asia. This is what they revealed. The University of Stirling, Scotland, and Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology, Germany, published research that would change everything we thought we knew about plague's origin. They'd analyzed ancient DNA from teeth of plague victims buried in Kyrgyzstan dating to 1338 to 1339. The DNA revealed that the Black Death originated in Central Asia, not China as previously theorized. More critically, the DNA showed that the 1330s outbreak in Kyrgyzstan was the Big Bang of plague, the point where the bacterium evolved its pandemic form before spreading westward along Silk Road trade routes to reach Europe in 1347. Before we go through what teeth revealed about plague, and trust me, we're going tooth by tooth, discovery by discovery, showing how forensic science transformed medieval history from chronicle-based guesswork to DNA-based certainty, comment where you're from. Because scientists might study teeth from your region next. Plague victims are buried across Europe, Asia, North Africa. Every excavation could contain teeth-preserving plague DNA. Every grave could rewrite history. Comment your location. Let's map where teeth might be waiting to reveal their secrets. Why teeth? The forensic science. Teeth are perfect time capsules. Unlike bone, which remodels continuously throughout life, tooth enamel and dentin form once and remain stable. The dental pulp, the soft tissue core containing blood vessels and nerves, becomes infected during septicemic diseases like plague when bacteria circulate in bloodstream. When the person dies, the pulp dries and becomes mummified inside the sealed environment of the tooth. Bacteria DNA in that mummified pulp can survive for millennia if burial conditions prevent moisture penetration. This preservation is why forensic scientists prefer teeth over bones for ancient pathogen detection. Bones are porous and constantly exchange minerals with surrounding soil. Bacterial DNA in bones often degrades or becomes contaminated by environmental bacteria. Teeth are less porous, more protected, more reliable. The hard enamel shell protects the pulp from environmental contamination. If you want to know what killed someone 700 years ago, extract a tooth, carefully drill into the pulp cavity without contamination, extract DNA, sequence it, compare to known pathogens. If they died from plague, you'll find Yersinia pestis DNA. The first successful extraction of plague DNA from teeth happened in 1998. French researchers analyzed teeth from bodies in a Marseille mass grave dating to 1722 plague outbreak. They extracted Yersinia pestis DNA, proving conclusively that plague killed these people, not smallpox or typhus or other diseases sometimes confused with plague in historical records. This opened the field of paleomicrobiology, using ancient DNA to diagnose diseases in archaeological populations. Since 1998, researchers have analyzed teeth from hundreds of plague victims across dozens of archaeological sites. The Edinburgh discovery in 2024 found plague DNA in tooth plaque of a child buried in 14th century, the first scientific proof that plague reached Scotland, confirming what chronicles had claimed but couldn't prove. The Alghero, Sardinia excavation analyzed 160 individuals from a 1582 to 1583 plague outbreak, studying both plague presence and dental health, revealing diet and living conditions. The Czech Republic mass graves yielded 85 teeth that were radiocarbon dated and analyzed, distinguishing plague deaths from famine deaths in the same cemetery. Each study adds pieces to the puzzle. Each tooth reveals information that chronicles never recorded because chroniclers didn't know to record it. Chroniclers couldn't see bacteria, couldn't analyze genomes, couldn't trace evolutionary changes in pathogens. But teeth preserve all of this, waiting for forensic scientists to extract and analyze it centuries later. Secret number 1. Plague's origin and spread. The 2022 Kyrgyzstan study analyzed teeth from 7 individuals buried in 1338 to 1339 in cemeteries near Lake Issyk Kul. Gravestones at the sites mentioned pestilence as cause of death, unusual enough that researchers suspected plague. They extracted teeth, analyzed dental pulp DNA, found Yersinia pestis. But that wasn't the revelation. Plague had been confirmed in dozens of sites already. The revelation came from phylogenetic analysis, mapping how plague strains are related evolutionarily. The Kyrgyzstan plague strain sits at the base of the phylogenetic tree of all Black Death strains found in Europe. This means the European plague came from this Central Asian population. Not from China. Not from Mongolia. From Kyrgyzstan, specifically the Tian Shan mountain region where local ground squirrels serve as plague reservoir hosts. The 1338 to 1339 outbreak was probably a spillover event where plague jumped from squirrels to humans, then evolved adaptations allowing human-to-human transmission via fleas. From Kyrgyzstan, plague spread westward along Silk Road trade routes. The teeth from Kaffa victims, 1346 to 1347, show plague strains descending from the Kyrgyzstan strain. The teeth from Italian victims, 1348, show strains descending from Kaffa. The teeth from French victims, 1348 to 1349, show strains descending from Italian strains. The teeth from English victims, 1349, show strains descending from French strains. Each geographic progression is documented in bacterial genomes extracted from teeth. The spread pattern matches historical trade routes exactly, confirming that plague spread through human commerce, not through spontaneous outbreaks in multiple locations. This resolves a century-long debate about plague's origin. Chinese chronicles describe devastating epidemics in the 1330s, leading some historians to theorize Chinese origin. But the DNA says Kyrgyzstan, not China. The Chinese epidemics were probably plague spreading from the same Central Asian reservoir but via different routes. The teeth don't lie. The DNA is definitive. Plague's pandemic origin was Central Asia in the late 1330s, spreading westward through trade. Secret number 2. Why the Black Death was so lethal. Teeth from Black Death victims reveal that the 1348 to 1353 pandemic was caused by a particularly virulent strain of Yersinia pestis. Genetic analysis shows the Black Death strain had specific mutations in virulence genes, genes controlling how aggressively the bacteria invade host immune systems. These mutations made the Black Death strain approximately 1.5 to 2 times more lethal than earlier plague strains and modern plague strains. The virulence genes that mutated include those controlling formation of the bacterial capsule, protecting bacteria from immune cells, those controlling secretion systems, allowing bacteria to inject toxins into host cells, and those controlling biofilm formation in flea digestive tracts, allowing bacteria to block fleas and force them to bite repeatedly, enhancing transmission. Each mutation independently increased lethality slightly. Together they created a superstrain that killed 60 to 90% of infected individuals, much higher than the 30 to 60% mortality of earlier and later plague strains. Why did these mutations arise? Probably evolutionary accident. Bacteria mutate randomly. Most mutations are neutral or harmful to the bacteria. Occasionally a mutation is beneficial, increasing survival or reproduction. The Black Death strain's virulence mutations were beneficial to the bacterium, allowing it to overcome host immune responses more effectively, but catastrophic to humans. The strain spread rapidly because it killed so many people so quickly that it had maximal opportunity to transmit before hosts died. High virulence created high transmission, created high mortality, created conditions for further spread. A deadly positive feedback loop encoded in bacterial genes and preserved in victim teeth. Secret number 3. Plague killed rich and poor differently. Teeth reveal social class through dental health indicators. Caries, cavities, periodontal disease, tooth wear, calculus, tartar, and antemortem tooth loss all correlate with diet, oral hygiene, and access to dental care. Wealthy medieval people had better dental health than poor people because they ate less abrasive food, consumed less sugar, expensive until late medieval period, had access to tooth cleaning implements, and could afford tooth extraction when necessary. Poor people ate coarse bread full of grit from millstone particles, consumed whatever sugar they could afford once it became available, had minimal oral hygiene, and suffered untreated dental infections. The Alghero study analyzed teeth from 160 plague victims and found that all social classes had similar plague infection rates. Yersinia pestis DNA appeared in wealthy and poor victims' teeth at similar frequencies. Plague killed across class lines. But wealthy victims had significantly better dental health before dying, fewer caries, less periodontal disease, less tooth loss. Poor victims had terrible dental health. 50 to 70% had active caries, 40 to 60% had periodontal disease, many had abscesses and lost teeth. This tells us that plague was egalitarian killer, but living conditions before plague were profoundly unequal. The dental health data also reveals that plague outbreaks created temporary equality. During catastrophic mortality, rich and poor died at similar rates because plague spread through fleas that don't discriminate by social class. But before and after plague, inequality persisted. The teeth preserve both the temporary equality of pandemic and the permanent inequality of normal medieval life. Secret number 4. Children suffered most. Multiple studies show that children died disproportionately from plague. The Edinburgh excavation found plague DNA in a child's teeth. The Alghero excavation found that 48% of victims were subadults, under age 18. The Czech excavations found similar proportions. Teeth reveal why children died at higher rates. They had less developed immune systems, they had higher exposure through living in close quarters with infected parents, they received less care when sick because adults prioritized caring for income-earning family members over dependent children. The teeth also reveal that surviving children suffered lasting health impacts. Children who survived plague and lived into adulthood showed dental indicators of severe childhood stress, enamel hypoplasia, horizontal grooves in teeth caused by interrupted enamel formation during malnutrition or illness. These hypoplastic lines are visible in teeth of adults who survived childhood plague, marking permanently the trauma their bodies experienced. The teeth preserve childhood suffering decades after the child grew up. Secret number 5. Plague returned repeatedly. Teeth from multiple time periods show that plague persisted in Europe for 4 centuries after the Black Death. The Alghero excavation dated to 1582 to 1583 shows plague still killing Sardinians 240 years after the first outbreak. The Marseille excavation dated to 1722 shows plague killing French people 374 years after the first outbreak. Each outbreak left bodies containing teeth containing DNA proving Yersinia pestis remained endemic in European rodent populations. But the DNA also reveals that later plague outbreaks involved different strains than the Black Death. The bacterium evolved continuously, accumulating mutations, diversifying into regional variants. By the 17th century, European plague was caused by multiple distinct strains descended from the original Black Death strain but genetically diverged. Some strains were more virulent than others. Some killed faster. Some spread more efficiently. The teeth preserve this evolutionary history, documenting how plague adapted to European conditions across centuries. Secret number 6. Diet made plague worse. The Alghero dental analysis revealed that plague victims had extremely high rates of dental caries. 93% of adults and 46% of children had cavities. The caries were caused by high carbohydrate diet, lots of bread, little meat, increasing sugar consumption. High carbohydrate diet correlates with poor immune function. People eating mostly bread and sugar have lower resistance to infectious disease than people eating balanced diets with adequate protein. The teeth suggest that medieval European diet predisposed people to plague mortality by weakening immune systems before infection even occurred. This finding has implications for understanding why mortality varied geographically. Regions with better diet, more meat, more dairy, more vegetables, might have experienced lower mortality than regions subsisting primarily on bread. The teeth can't prove this hypothesis directly because we don't have comparable dental data from all regions. But the correlation between poor dental health, indicating poor diet, and high mortality suggests diet mattered. The teeth hint that plague mortality wasn't purely biological, it was partly social, determined by food access and dietary quality. Secret number 7. Medieval people tried to fight plague with oral hygiene. Tooth calculus, tartar, from plague victims contains unexpected findings. High levels of aromatic plant compounds including thyme, rosemary, sage, and other herbs known to have antimicrobial properties. These compounds are present at levels suggesting deliberate consumption, not incidental dietary intake. Medieval medical texts recommended chewing aromatic herbs to purify corrupted air and prevent plague. The teeth prove people followed this advice. They were chewing antimicrobial herbs trying to prevent or cure plague. Did it work? No. The herbs had no effect on plague transmission or mortality because plague spreads through fleas, not air, and because the antimicrobial compounds in herbs don't kill Yersinia pestis effectively enough to prevent infection. But the presence of these compounds in tooth calculus reveals that medieval people were trying everything possible to survive. They followed medical advice even when that advice was based on incorrect disease models. The teeth preserved their desperate attempts to fight an enemy they couldn't see or understand. Here's my question for you. Comment your answer. If you lived in 1348 and doctors told you chewing herbs would prevent plague, would you do it even if you suspected it wouldn't work? Yes, try anything, or no, it's pointless. Your answer reveals whether you value doing something over doing nothing when facing disaster. Medieval people chose doing something. The herbs in their teeth prove it. Secret number 8. Starvation killed more than plague in some locations. The Czech excavation analyzed 85 teeth from mass graves thought to contain primarily plague victims. Radiocarbon dating of tooth enamel, which forms in childhood and records childhood diet through carbon isotopes, versus bone collagen, which remodels continuously and records recent diet, revealed that some individuals had carbon isotope signatures consistent with starvation in the months before death. These individuals died during a famine period, 1318 to 1322, and were buried in the same cemetery used later for plague victims, 1348 to 1350. The graves were mixed. Some contained famine victims, some contained plague victims, distinguishable only through isotope analysis and DNA testing. This finding corrected historical interpretation. The Czech chronicles mentioned both famine and plague but didn't clearly distinguish which deaths resulted from which cause. Modern historians assumed most deaths in 1318 to 1350 were plague deaths. The teeth proved otherwise. Significant mortality was famine-related, occurring before plague arrived. The distinction matters for understanding mortality patterns, population decline, and economic disruption. Teeth resolved what chronicles couldn't. Secret number 9. Environmental conditions preserved or destroyed DNA. Not all teeth contain recoverable DNA. Success rates for ancient DNA extraction vary from 10 to 90% depending on burial conditions. Teeth from waterlogged graves have low success rates because water degrades DNA. Teeth from dry graves have high success rates because desiccation preserves DNA. Teeth from acidic soils have low success rates because acid hydrolyzes DNA. Teeth from alkaline soils have moderate success rates. Teeth from frozen environments have very high success rates. The Edinburgh tooth that yielded plague DNA came from a grave with ideal preservation conditions, relatively dry, neutral pH soil, cool Scottish climate. The Kyrgyzstan teeth came from mountain graves with cold temperatures and low moisture, nearly perfect DNA preservation. The Alghero teeth came from Mediterranean climate with alternating wet and dry seasons, moderate preservation requiring careful extraction techniques. The success or failure of DNA extraction depends as much on 7 centuries of environmental chemistry as on laboratory technique. This means that our understanding of plague geography is biased toward areas with good preservation. We know a lot about plague in cold, dry climates because teeth there preserve DNA well. We know less about plague in tropical, wet climates because teeth there degrade quickly. The teeth reveal not just plague history but the limits of what teeth can reveal. Secret number 10. Plague DNA is still evolving. Comparison of ancient plague DNA from teeth with modern plague DNA shows the bacterium continues evolving. Modern Yersinia pestis strains from Madagascar, Democratic Republic of Congo, United States prairie dog populations, and other contemporary plague reservoirs are genetically distinct from medieval strains. The bacterium has accumulated hundreds of mutations since the Black Death. Some mutations are neutral, genetic drift with no functional impact. Some are adaptive, improving bacterial survival or transmission in modern conditions. The concerning finding is that some modern strains show antibiotic resistance genes absent from medieval strains. Antibiotic resistance evolved recently in response to antibiotic use. If plague becomes resistant to all antibiotics, which is evolutionarily possible, it returns to medieval lethality. We'd be back in 1348 facing 60 to 90% mortality with no effective treatment. The teeth warn us, plague evolves, we must evolve our responses, the threat is permanent. What the teeth tell us about the future. 200 teeth from plague victims reveal patterns that matter today. Pandemics originate in reservoir populations, usually animals, and spill over when humans contact reservoirs. Kyrgyzstan plague jumped from ground squirrels. COVID-19 probably jumped from bats. The next pandemic will jump from some reservoir we're contacting through environmental disruption, climate change, or expansion into wildlife habitats. Pandemics spread through trade routes. Silk Road spread plague. Air travel spread COVID-19. Whatever trade networks exist when the next pandemic emerges will spread it. Pandemics evolve. The Black Death strain evolved high virulence. COVID-19 variants evolved increased transmissibility. The next pandemic will evolve too, possibly becoming more lethal or more transmissible or both. Pandemics kill unequally but appear egalitarian. Plague killed rich and poor, but poor suffered more before dying and poor had fewer resources to flee or seek care. COVID-19 killed across demographics, but poor, elderly, immunocompromised died at higher rates. The next pandemic will follow the same pattern, apparent equality hiding real inequality. Pandemics are recordable in human remains. Everything about COVID-19 is recordable in digital data, but future pandemics will also be recordable in biological tissues. If civilization collapses and digital records are lost, teeth will preserve evidence of what killed us. Future archaeologists could extract our teeth and sequence pathogens just as we sequence medieval pathogens. Our teeth will tell our pandemic stories to people 700 years from now if anyone survives to study them. One final call to action. Comment DNA if you're still reading. Tell me which forensic technique I should explain next. What bones reveal about medieval violence? What hair reveals about medieval poisoning? What fingerprints on pottery reveal about medieval workers? Comment preference plus DNA. The forensic scientist placed the 700-year-old tooth back in its storage container. She'd extracted DNA. She'd sequenced it. She'd analyzed it. The tooth had revealed its secret, Yersinia pestis, the bacterium that killed its owner and millions like them. The tooth had preserved that DNA for 7 centuries, waiting for technology to advance enough to read it. The tooth had told its story. And there are millions more teeth waiting in graves across continents, each containing DNA, each ready to reveal secrets about pandemics past that inform our understanding of pandemics future. The teeth are patient. The teeth are permanent. The teeth remember what we forgot. The teeth preserve what chronicles omitted. The teeth reveal truth that propaganda concealed. 200 teeth from plague victims rewrote medieval history. 200 million teeth remain unstudied, waiting to reveal more secrets. The graves are everywhere. The teeth are everywhere. The DNA is everywhere. Waiting. Patient. Permanent. Ready to tell us how our ancestors died and warn us that we could die the same way. The teeth know. The teeth remember. The teeth reveal. Forever. Waiting for forensic scientists to extract and analyze and understand. The secret is in the teeth. It's always been in the teeth. We just needed 7 centuries and DNA sequencing technology to read it. The secret is death is recordable, pandemics are traceable, truth is preserved in calcium phosphate and genetic code. The teeth never lie. They only wait. And when we finally read them, they tell us everything. Everything we need to know about plague, about pandemic, about death, about survival, about the future waiting in the past. The teeth reveal all. If we're brave enough to extract them and wise enough to understand what they're telling us. The secret is in the teeth. Always. Forever.